Kimberly Bowman is an entrepreneur, a magazine publisher, a radio talk show host, and an author. And now she's out with her latest book. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with Kimberly one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Kimberly!
Hi!
It's so good to see you again.
It's good to see you too.
You know, I went back and watched our interview that I did with you back in July. What was it, June of 2016?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Hot, very hot that day. Remember that?
It was really hot.
And now it's cold out here.
I know.
Snow and ice on the ground.
Yeah, definitely. We're not used to the ice on the ground and the snow here in Charleston, so it's abnormal weather. I'll say that much. So.
Agreed. But you came to brighten the day.
Yeah, I did. I always do.
Because, you know, you have something big to talk about.
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I need to talk about.
Well, let me go begin with the obvious. And it says this: the awkward, hilarious, painful guide on transitioning into your 20s and surviving.
Yes.
Okay. I've known you for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how awkward, hilarious, painful was it for you to transition into your 20s and survive?
Well, I wrote the book. The book is pretty much my experiences from, childhood to like teens going into adulthood. I use those, words to describe it because it was all of that and so much more. Because for me, I really don't feel like I had that much guidance. Someone to say, okay, this is what you do. This is how you need to do this. This is where you need to go. So it was really like awkward for me because I'm like, I'm just figuring this out as I go. Right. It was hilarious because, of course, with all bad moments, there's the good moments where you can laugh at yourself. You can laugh at, things that happen and, memories or whatnot. And it was painful because I feel like I experienced a lot of, the bad things that really had a profound effect on me. So of course you need to talk about that if you're going to talk about the awkward times and the hilarious times. It's important to talk about the painful times because I feel like so many people and so many successful people, they focus on the good. Like, I went to college, I did this, I went that. They don't really tell you about the bad stuff that happened. Like I did this, I screwed up, I lost all of this and whatnot. You don't really hear too much of the negative things that they experience. And I feel like the negative is what inspires you because everybody can relate to the negative. I can't relate to you if you're telling me about all your degrees that you have or, all of the wonderful things that you did in your life. I can relate to the pain. I can relate to frustrating times. I can relate to awkward times because we've all been through that, whether we want to admit it or not. So I wanted to create something that highlighted all of that and told my story because I felt like with everything that I had been through, I wanted to be able to take some time to, tell my story. Like I wanted to help someone else. I've always been someone that's been keen on helping people and shining a light on things that people need to know about. So I wanted to be able to offer that, to people to be like, hey, I know people look at me like I'm an entrepreneur, I do this, I do that, I've done this. But, that's on the surface, but down beneath, like these are the things that happened to me on the way to that. So, yeah.
Wow. I gotta go back and read this title.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. The awkward, hilarious, painful guide on transitioning into your 20s and surviving. Mm-hmm. Okay, so once you pass the awkward stage, the hilarious stage, the painful stage, and you already transitioned, what next?
Well, and this is something that I haven't really talked about too much since I, put the book out, but what I plan to do is, because I really like writing is very therapeutic for me. I enjoy it so much. And the process of writing this book was very therapeutic because I talked about a lot of things that I'd never spoken to anybody about. Like I keep saying, my business now since reading the book. But, it's, I plan to do more books like this. Okay. So I'm 25 right now. Mm-hmm. So once I get in my early 30s, I'll probably be like, okay, I'm gonna do a guide on transitioning into your 30s.
Oh yeah.
One transitioning into your 40s. Yeah. Something. Yeah. It's therapeutic for me, but it also be helpful to someone else that's coming right behind me. So because I don't feel like, in life and when you become an adult, everything's so hard. Like, you know, people aren't obligated to care about you anymore. You know, when you were a kid, it was like, oh, I'll hold your hand. But now it's like, oh, you're 18, get away from me.
Wow.
You know, so I want to be able to be that person to be like, you know, not going to hold your hand, but it's going to be all right, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Let me go back again. The awkward, hilarious, painful guide of transitioning into your 20s and surviving. What other adjectives would you describe this book?
I would say creative. I would say self-expressive, because if you read the book, you're like, yeah, Kim wrote this book. Because I talk just like how I'm talking to you right now. Like, you know, I'm very goofy. I'm very animated at times. So I show that in the book. You know, it's not very stuffy, not big words and whatnot that I use, but it's just me. Like, if I was sitting here talking to you, like, listen, don't do this. What if I did this? And ciao. You know? So it's a lot of, you know, myself in it. I would say thought-provoking, because a lot of the things that I say in there, like, it really helps you see things from another side. Like, oh, like, I didn't notice that, or I didn't know that was a thing. You know, because I talk a lot about my self-esteem and self-confidence issues in the book, and, you know, going through that as a child and you know, following me into being an adult. You know, a lot of those experiences are a part of the pain that I experienced. But, you know, so I would say very, like, releasing, if that's the word, releasing, like being able to, you know, finally be able to say, like, hey, this is what happened to me. You know, being able to show people, like, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only person that's dealing with this stuff. So.
Wow. And I know when I went back and watched a couple of interviews that you did with Channels 2 and also with Fox 24, you basically said it's naturally optimistic. You're naturally optimistic.
Yeah.
When did you become that?
I feel like for me, I've always been like that. I don't think there was like a day of like transition into that. I mean, I grew up in, you know, not one of the best neighborhoods in Charleston, and I feel like you kind of had to be optimistic if you ever hope to, you know, get out of that area or get out of the negativity and be something else.
Cool.
I mean, you have to be optimistic about everything, because when bad things happen, they're meant to like break you down. But if you can't see the light in that, then it's like you're just gonna be sitting here broken, you know. And that's what happened to me. Like, I had a lot of bad things happen to me, but I was able to find the light and find a way through, and you know, I was able to come out a better person. So I just think it's just, you know, having so many things happen to you, and seeing things happen to other people, you just naturally just want to, you know, you don't want to dwell on the negative for very long, because life is still going to go on without you, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah.
You talk about growing up here, obviously, and I know you said this in the recent interview, but growing up in Charleston is an experience in itself. And I'm curious, how do you experience Charleston now as an adult?
I feel like Charleston now is very different, of course. It's very different, very, very different in the people, the culture, everything. So as an adult, I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it. Like, I'm very open-minded now, because before, when you're a child, like, I feel like your parents and your elders, people who are older than you, they tell you what to think and they tell you how to feel. You know, like, I'll never forget one time I went out to dinner with my parents, and my mom, it was like, the waiter was like, oh, well, what kind of salad dressing for your daughter? She was like, she'll have this. Like, I didn't get a chance to respond. So I was like, oh, okay, you know. But now as an adult, I'm more open-minded, and I can see why my parents did the things that they did. I can see and I can understand, you know, why things are the way that they are. And, you know, for me, I'm one of those people like, okay, let's do something about this.
Yes.
You know, that's why I do what I do through my business. Like, you know, I want to be able to offer that change, offer people a fresh perspective. Like, hey, Charleston is a very old and conservative town, and, you know, we got a lot of dirt, we got a lot of demons that are chasing us, but, you know, I want to be able to offer, like, it doesn't have to be like that for long. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. And you said, too, that you've always wanted to write a book. And here you are with this book here. But now what? What else is next for you?
Well, I do, for those who read my first book, I mentioned briefly an alter ego that I had, this person in my mind that I would always dream about, that I would always think about. It was this, because I felt like I was very weak, very, had a lot of self-esteem issues, and I wasn't confident to go and do anything, and I wasn't confident enough to go and, socialize with people, dress, I didn't like to look at mirrors. I didn't like any of that. And this person in my head, she was everything that I wasn't. So it was like she was strong, she was beautiful, she had long hair, she was like very sassy, like she was that person, like you don't want to mess with her. Like, she gonna come and let you know what it is. And she was like my hero, like, cause I always would, at the end of the day when you replay your day in your head, when bad things would happen, I would imagine her coming in and saving me or, making me feel better or something like that. So I'm doing a comic book on her.
Oh.
So I'm looking right now to have someone bring to life the idea that I have for her, how I want her to look. Because she's a superhero, but at the same time, she's just an average person. Okay. She's just a super person, if that makes sense. Not necessarily a hero, but she's a super person. Because we always idolize these people that have these powers and, all these things. But we don't really pay attention to the average people that are walking amongst us that are doing amazing, incredible things, Yeah. So, people always think you need powers to be a superhero, like, we're the greatest superheroes in the world. You don't need powers. And just like people like Captain America, people love Captain America because, he has the super serum, but he's just an average person. Like, he doesn't shoot rays out of his hands or anything like that. He can just awesome.
Awesome, man.
But yeah, I'm going to be doing a comic book series on her. That I'm probably going to run through my online magazine. Okay. And then I have another book that I'm doing because I have a summer camp that I'm developing currently. It's called Exquisite Kids, which is specifically for kids who are dealing with self-esteem and self-confidence issues. So I'm creating a workbook for families to use with their kids who are dealing with those things to bring them closer together, but also to be able to, because we can do activities in schools, we can do activities with them, but if they're not being taught or that stuff isn't being extended into the household, then everything is kind of in vain, So I'm doing that workbook and then the comic book series. So right now, those are my only two publishing projects that I have coming up.
Well, can we get the comic portion of this to go to the play?
Let's get the comic out first. I want to bring her to life first. Okay. And then, eventually we're going to transition over into some other things.
That's awesome. And you mentioned the first book. I guess this is your second one.
Well, I have the first book, but I also have a second book. It's called How to Be a Dope Entrepreneur.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
That one, it focuses on, because I get a lot of people all the time that come up to me. I want to start a business. How do I start a business? Right. Can you help me? Blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, okay, I can help you. But I just wanted to create something so I can just be like, here.
Sure.
I don't have the time, but here, read this book, and it's going to answer all your questions.
Wow, that's awesome.
So the book is basically just my way of teaching people how to start a business. So the first part of the book, it focuses on, like getting your EIN number, business structure, all of that stuff, all the filings and things you need to do, things you need to keep in mind. And then the second part is like the more fun part where I'm, again, talking as if I'm just sitting here talking to you and I'm sharing my experiences and telling you, okay, don't do this. Like, don't mix business and pleasure. Don't mix this and that. Don't do this. And then at the end of the book, I have 12 pages that are blank where you can set goals for yourself every month. So it's interactive, so you can write in there, you can check things off or whatnot. So yeah, there's a checklist, and then there's the 12 pages for you to like write your goals down for each month. So yeah.
What is the biggest difference between the first book and the third book in your mind?
I feel like the first book is more so like the first me, not the first me, but the old me, and the second book is like the new me, because the new me is an entrepreneur, I'm a professional, I guess I'm well known and well respected.
You are here. You are right. You have arrived.
So I wanted to, create something to be a testament of that, like, okay, this is all the knowledge that I've gained from being an entrepreneur, so the first book is like everything that I've been through, and then the second book is everything that I'm going to do and currently doing. So
And I also read listened to one of the interviews. You basically said you always wanted to help and uplift people. I'm wondering who's helping you and who's uplifting you these days.
For me, I'm very self-motivated, so it's not necessarily that I need people to motivate me. Not saying that I don't have people in my life that do, but I feel like I'm naturally self-motivated, and I have like another version of myself that's just like, girl, you're gonna do this. This is how it's gonna go. Like, screw everybody else. This is how it's gonna work. So, it's like I have two versions of myself. Like my mom always says, like, I there might have been a twin in there, but I think Kim like there's something to her. No. But like I'm very self motivated. So when I think about things, it's just like, okay, I can do this. And then I look, and for me, I always tell people this now, like, if Donald Trump is president, you can be anything you want to be. So I've kind of like lived off of that philosophy, and that's what really keeps me motivated. Like you can literally be whatever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. So I've always lived by that when it comes to self-motivation. And then outside of that, I have my parents. They're the reason why I'm so conceited, because they're just like, oh, like, you can do anything. Like, oh, yeah, girl, you can do this. My child can do this and this. So definitely, they motivate me and they make me feel good about things. And, whenever I'm doubting myself, they're kind of just like, no, you can do it. My dad thinks that I'm just, I think my dad was the first person that ever knew that I was going to be awesome, and I dedicated my first book to him, because he was one of the main people that was like, yeah, she's going to write a book. She's going to write a book. So I wrote in the beginning, I was like, well, you were the first person that really believed in me when it came to anything. And I said, well, you always wanted me to write a book, so here you go. So, and he loved it. So, I have them, I have my friends. Yes. It's always important when you're doing anything, or if you're running a business, but if you're doing anything or just living your life, it's good to have people around you that, can tell you when you're wrong and tell you when you're right. Or to be able to just give you that push or that confidence, or remind you of, that things are possible, and you're able to do these things, and, remind you that they have your back. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's always good. Well, Kimberly Bowman, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
And thank you for all that you do for this community.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. I will.
You're doing more than me.
Oh, stop. You're great as well.
I'm staying in my lane. I'm doing interviews.
He's great. Don't let him doubt himself. Quintin's awesome. We love Quintin. So.
And we love you too in this community.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate you.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.